Hey, what's going on? This is Mitchell Black from Bodies by Mitch at facebook.com/Bodies by Mitch. And I wanted to start getting some YouTube videos out there because, as you probably know, I work for Lifetime Fitness, and our team weight loss program has nutrition every week, and I constantly get asked to review it and questions. And I was like, but what better way to not only reach people in team weight loss through Lifetime Fitness, or people throughout the nation or throughout the world that need to that have questions on weight loss. So my goal is going to be throughout these YouTube segments to reach as many people as possible. And we're going to go over different topics every week. You can stay up to date with everything on facebook.com/Bodies by Mitch. Again, my name is Mitchell Black. Today, we're going to go over a very important segment that a lot of times we don't think about when we think about weight loss, but we're going to look at cortisol and adrenal function. A lot of times when we get focused on weight loss, or when we get focused on any goal really that pertains to weight loss or weight gain, we think, okay, if I'm going to lose weight, let me just eat less calories. Let me just eat less and exercise more, because that should work. Because mathematically it makes sense, and that's where it gets tricky. It makes sense on paper that if I eat less calories than I consume, I will lose weight. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. If I eat less calories than I burn is what I meant, then I'll lose weight. And on paper it does make sense, but if that was true, I wouldn't have a job. And what we're going to look at is the hormonal effect and the holistic approach of, okay, what's really happening to my body? And again, there's no quick fix. There's no silver bullet. There's not my weight loss program does this, or my weight loss program is the best out there because of X, Y, and Z. There is no one thing that fixes all, but cortisol and adrenal function have a lot to do with it. So the first thing I want to look at is we're going to talk a lot about a stressor hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is produced from your adrenal glands. And we're going to look at both of those and cover those first, and we'll talk about the effects of it. So again, cortisol, being a stressor hormone, is produced anytime your body's under stress. So whether that's you win the lottery, or whether that's you work out and exercise, or whether that's you just got into an argument with your spouse or something, doesn't matter. You put stress on your body, cortisol starts to raise up. Now, cortisol is produced from these things called adrenal glands, all right? And I'm going to give you an overview of what adrenal glands are, so as we go through this, you can understand what we're talking about. Adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys, all right? There's one on each kidney. The left one is kind of shaped like a triangle, and the right one is a little bit more round. Now, if you were to cut the adrenal gland in half, we're going to look at the anatomy of it real quick. If you were to cut the adrenal glands in half, it would be broken into two layers. You would imagine a triangle. On the outside part, which is pretty thick, it's a little pink lining, and it's called your cortex. And the cortex produces two hormones mainly. It produces cortisol and aldosterone. We're not going to talk about aldosterone because that's not the main focus we're looking for. We're looking for weight loss, so we're going to talk about cortisol. So cortisol and aldosterone are produced from the cortex of the adrenal glands, and the middle part of the adrenal glands, called the medulla, that's what's responsible for producing your endorphins, like adrenaline or noradrenaline, and epinephrine or norepinephrine. And those are responsible for fight or flight, which we'll talk about. But for our main purpose of weight loss, we're going to look at the cortex of the adrenals and cortisol, and what does it produce and what does it cause, all right? So anytime, again, that your body's under stress, your body produces this hormone called cortisol, and it's produced from the adrenal glands, all right? Now, here's what's supposed to happen. Your body is designed to deal with acute stress, not chronic stress, meaning that you're stressed every now and then, not stressed all the time. So your body gets this stress signal, and it sends it to the hippocampus in your brain. And your hippocampus interprets the signal and sends it to your pituitary gland. And not that you need to remember all the topics that all the terms that we're talking about. It's going to make sense at the end. I'm just getting all the physiology and anatomy across first. But it goes to your hippocampus, it interprets the signal, and sends it to your pituitary. Your pituitary gland is pretty small. It's only the size of a pea, and it sits in the middle part of your brain, but it's kind of like the master gland. It interprets all the signals coming to it and then it sends it to different glands throughout your body to tell it what to do, and that creates the physiological after effect. Like it'll send a signal to your adrenal glands telling it to produce more cortisol if your body's under stress. Now, your adrenal glands have receptors on it for the cortisol receptors to get signals from it to tell it to send out more cortisol. And what's really backwards and really frustrating is that the more cortisol that you produce, so the more stress you are under, and you produce all this cortisol, your body inhibits the signal from your hippocampus to your pituitary. So you actually can't get the signal from those two parts of your body to stop telling your adrenal glands to produce cortisol. So your adrenals start producing cortisol like crazy because they're not getting the signal to stop. All right. So that's basically all I want to cover for physiology and anatomy. I want to start talking about the effects of cortisol. So now that we got all that stuff out of the way, what does cortisol do? The stuff I just talked about, it's good to know, but we really need to understand what does cortisol do and how do I manage it. All right. So what cortisol is produced from. So we talked about it's produced from the adrenal glands. This is where it starts getting really interesting, is that you can produce cortisol anytime your body's under stress. All right. And I've said that 20 times in this PowerPoint, but it's any type of stress. It can be caffeine, it can be lack of sleep, it can be too much sleep, it can be autoimmune disorders, it can be blood sugar drops, it can be not eating enough calories, it can be, let's say you have an infection or an inflammatory response, all of those things. That's not limited to that. There's many things. When we look at decreasing calories by too much, oh my gosh, I mean, we see people all the time eat 1,400 calories a day because it's what Weight Watchers told them to do, or it's what Jenny Craig told them to do, or I'm this tall and I weigh this much, I should eat this many calories. That's not enough. It's not enough calories to survive throughout the day. I mean, simply if we look at the success rate post-diet, it's like, okay, you know, everybody knows somebody that's lost weight on Weight Watchers, right? Everybody knows somebody that gained the weight back when they got off Weight Watchers, right? It's not a lifestyle change. It's a starvation diet, or it doesn't matter what the calories are coming from. So when you deprive your body of too many calories, in order for your body to survive, it produces cortisol, because cortisol is your energy. Cortisol regulates your energy system and it regulates your immune system. So it does play a couple good roles in your body. Cortisol is definitely good, but just like anything else, too much of it is bad. I mean, if you were to cut out your adrenal glands and you couldn't produce cortisol, you die in like 20 minutes. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any cortisol. It's just when you produce too much, what happens. So we can look at lack of calories like we just looked at. Caffeine, for example. Caffeine elevates your cortisol levels 20%. All right. Now, that's per 100 milligrams. The tricky thing about it, though, is we look at it, we say, okay, cortisol is going up. You've told me it's kind of bad. We talked about the anatomy or physiology. What does that mean? Well, cortisol's one of its main jobs in the body is to store belly fat. It stores tons of belly fat. And the reason that it stores a lot of fat in your belly is because the fat cells in your belly have 4 times as many cortisol receptors than any other type of fat in your body. All right. And it's weird how your body stores fat, because it'll mostly store fat in the belly from cortisol. And it's the type of fat that's there. Like you'll notice some people, like burn victims, they will have a skin transplant or a fat transplant from, like, let's say their stomach to the back of their hand. And when they gain weight, they'll start gaining weight on the back of their hand because it's the same fat cells that were in their stomach. We don't typically gain weight on the back of our hands or our feet or our foreheads. It's because these fat cells have 4 times more cortisol receptors. So they love to store fat. Anytime cortisol goes up and it gets higher, it starts increasing your short-term memory loss. It starts decreasing DHEA and sex drive. So the building block of all your sex hormones, which is DHEA, starts getting cut out. It inhibits your body's ability to metabolize protein and increases carbohydrate metabolism. So you start using more carbs and burning more carbs, so your body wants more carbs. You get tons of carb and sugar cravings. Typically around 4 p.m., you'll notice that you'll 60 to